Hello and welcome to this introduction video on shooting and manipulation of infrared images. My name's Barry Beckham. I think it's pretty obvious that shooting infrared images with a converted camera is likely to be a niche market. Infrared photography will have a limited following, but most photographers seem to find that infrared images do have a certain universal impact and appeal. However, to have a go at this fascinating part of digital photography, you will require a spare camera and some expense to get it converted. This fact alone is likely to ensure that infrared is limited in its use among photographers, but it's well worth taking the plunge. Perhaps the images and videos we show here and our enthusiasm for infrared may inspire you to give this some thought. After this introduction, we have a presentation coming up next called the options. Now that will explain in more detail what options are open to you. This is a must-view part of this category of videos because it documents our experiences with at least 3 ways to enter infrared photography. Having dabbled with infrared photography back in my film days, I wanted to get back into it with a digital camera. My partner wanted to downsize her camera equipment, which left me with a spare Canon 5D Mark II digital SLR. Now, rather than sell that camera, and we always lose quite a bit of money when we do so, I decided to have the camera converted to shoot infrared photographs. In Australia, I chose Camera Clinic, based in Melbourne. But wherever you live in the world, you will not have too much difficulty finding someone to do this for you. When it comes to shooting infrared images, I think we need to start off by making the assumption that everyone will be shooting raw images exclusively. We need those raw images to give us the latitude and flexibility we need to create those sparkling black and white infrared photographs that we're looking for. This category of videos will demonstrate some of the techniques for manipulating infrared images in Photoshop and Lightroom. Now we're going to be using mostly Adobe Camera Raw and Photoshop, but the tools and the sliders we're going to be using are exactly the same in Adobe Camera Raw as they are in Lightroom's Develop module. Producing sparkling monochrome infrared images with that wow value is remarkably easy because infrared handles contrast so well, far better than conventional visible light photography under the same conditions, and it's that which adds a fair degree of its appeal for me. Remember too that the techniques we're going to be using in this category of videos are not exclusive to black and white infrared images. Good techniques are good techniques, and they're much the same as those we apply to our conventional light photography. In this category we look at the image editing techniques we need that bring out the power, the contrast and the wow value of those infrared images. We also look at adding colour, like duotone, or even manually added colour if you have a little patience. Maybe creating a hand-coloured image like this from an infrared may take just a little bit of time, but we'll show you the techniques and some great tips and tricks on how to speed up the process without losing the quality we're looking for. We also take a look at third-party plug-in filters because since I began shooting and manipulating infrared images, I have to admit I've become quite a fan of the Google Nik filter system. Now, the filters that we use are not applied instead of image editing, but as well as. What we mean is we get the image to a great standard to begin with, and then experiment and see where the Nik filters can take us, making a derivative of the original. In with our demonstrations on image manipulation, we also deal with exposure of infrared images. We look at bracketing 3 exposures around what we consider a pretty typical exposure in bright conditions of 125th of a second at f8. Now, we can say that bracketing is always good because we can go home safe in the knowledge that at least one of those 3 images is going to be pretty good to manipulate through Lightroom or Camera Raw. But of course we can also make another argument that because infrared is so good with handling contrast, almost any one of those would produce a great image. But it's always nice to have choices. Before we have a camera converted to shoot infrared images, there's always some trepidation, of course, but I have to say that in shooting infrared images over the past few months, it's been one of the most stimulating and interesting projects I've had for quite some time. And I've been around photography for many years now, so I'm not very easily impressed. So if you're looking for something different in your photography, then perhaps shooting infrared is it. While shooting infrared images, there's been 2 areas that have surprised me, but in a positive way. The first of those is that in the middle of the day, when the light is very contrasty, when we're putting our conventional cameras away, well, that's the time when we can get out the converted digital SLR and shoot our infrared images. The second surprise to me was that when we're out shooting infrared images in less than perfect infrared light, in other words overcast conditions which wouldn't be considered typical for infrared photography, as long as we get a good exposure, we can create some good standard monochrome images bursting with contrast and appeal.